to go.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the February 9th, 2021 Public Work Session to order. Mrs. Burns, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Parentano.
Present.
Mr. Allen.
Present.
Mrs. Bowman.
Here.
Ms. Boyle.
Present.
Mrs. Hallenbeck.
Present.
Mr. Kovitz is absent with prior notice. Mr. Marrington.
Here.
Mr. Cirillo.
Here.
And Mr. Sullivan is also absent with prior notice. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mrs. Burns. This evening, the board met in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss matters of employment, issues related to labor relations, the purchase or lease of real property, matters related to litigation, and matters related to school safety and security. Mrs. Burns, do you have any announcements?
No announcements.
No announcements from our secretary. At this time, I would like to make an announcement read into the record. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I apologize for my oversight. At this time, I'd like to read in the record a statement from the board on where we currently are with investigating our long-range facilities planning. The Neshaminy School District administrators and school board members have started discussions in board committee meetings surrounding concepts to upgrade and/or possibly replace aging facilities. A big part of that discussion is the long-term physical plant needs of the Pearl S. Buck Elementary School in Levittown. District Superintendent Dr. Robert McGee and Business Administrator Don Irwin have asked both the Business Committee and the Facilities Operation Committee members to investigate the administration's recommendations that plans for overdue facilities projects to be accelerated and to further consider bundling other needed future projects. The purpose is not only meet the current and future needs of our students and staff, but do so while taking advantage of a historically low borrowing rate and advantageous bond markets. This is a unique opportunity to carry out needed facility improvements while retaining fiscal responsible budgeting. The Board Facilities Committee, chaired by Mr. Marty Sullivan, recently completed a preliminary meeting during which the following were discussed: building a new elementary school on the Maple Point Middle School property as compared to extensive renovations at the Pearl S. Buck Elementary School, bundling other district-wide building physical plant needs, for instance, HVAC, roofs, parking lot projects, and other needed repairs to accelerate completion, and athletic field and outdoor facility renovations at the Neshaminy High School. The Facilities Committee heard presentations from both Spiesel Architecture Group and Site IQ, formerly Reynolds Construction, on conceptual sites and building concepts for a new elementary school. On the recommendation of the district administration, the Facilities Committee approved moving into the first phase of investigating of district-wide elementary needs by requesting a proposal from Spiesel Architecture on conducting a feasibility and demographic study. The committee also asked for an updated evaluation from Site Logic IQ of Pearl Buck Elementary School building needs, including program-related enhancements, site capacity, and facilities renovation. At the January 28th Business Operations Committee meeting chaired by Mrs. Tina Hollenbach, the finance options recommended by the administration for accelerating outlined long-term facilities plans, as well as the 2021-2022 preliminary district budget, were discussed. The last district-wide feasibility study was conducted in 2013 by Spiesel Architecture in support of the Neshaminy School District's Roadmap for the Future. At that time, proposed projects, including Guaranteed Energy Savings Act upgrades to 6 Neshaminy School buildings, along with the construction of the first new elementary school in the district since 1968, Tawanka Elementary, Work started in 2014 and was carried out in 3 phases. The construction and upgrades were completed in 2017 on time and on budget. Students and staff now benefit from improved heating and air conditioning systems in every building, as well as the addition of energy-efficient electrical systems, lighting, plumbing, and building insulation. Those GIZA projects were financed by anticipated future energy savings and restructuring of prior high-interest bond issues, resulting in a no additional cost to district taxpayers, foregoing any related tax increases. The first 3 phases of the roadmap projects represented a $65 million investment in the Chamonix facilities. The district administration and the school board remain committed to providing the best and safest possible learning environment for our students while maintaining a high level of fiscal responsibility for the taxpayers of Neshaminy. The need is great and the time is right to continue these efforts. The board will consistently keep the public aware of future meetings where these topics will be discussed, and we look forward to your participation and hopefully in an environment that you can attend in person. So that's all I have for announcements. We'll move on. That will bring us to our superintendent's report. Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Parentano. First, the February enrollment report is in board docs. There's nothing remarkable about that report. It is our normal ebb and flow, and enrollment is consistent. I'd like to take the rest of my time here to verbally explain the overview of what is now the district's recommendation, my recommendation, and the recommendation of the district cabinet as to what we should do as far as planning for the rest of the school year under these pandemic conditions. I'd like to start with a status report as to where we are. And those who are on the email list, you have that email from me. Those who are not on the email list, you can see the articulation of this plan in multiple pages on the district website. Presently, we're running two different programs at the elementary schools where we have students in 4 days a week and virtual on Friday. At the present time, we have roughly 17% of our students and their parents choosing to stay home and learn virtually. That's just less than 1 in 5. That number is approaching the number we had prior to the Thanksgiving break. So we seem to be returning to the numbers that we were at prior to the concerns of the spike after Thanksgiving and the concern of us bringing students back 4 days a week. At the secondary level, we're still running the blue and red hybrid. At the middle level, approximately 1 in 4 students, 25%, their parents are choosing to keep them home and learn from the live stream. That is up 9% from before Thanksgiving, but is pretty stable. At our high school, we have 44% choosing to learn from home, and that is significantly up from before Thanksgiving. It is double. Speaking of attendance, those who are supposed to come to school, our elementary attendance is no different than any other February as far as cold and flu season, so that's pretty consistent. Middle school is a bit higher, and high school is running at between 20 and 30% on any given day. So you can see we have a somewhat of an uncertainty at the high school level. We spent the month of January trying to secure vaccines for our staff, thinking there was a surplus, and also thinking that school employees were next in line in Phase 1B. It turns out neither of them are the case, so we were right back to where we were at the beginning of January without that particular timeline. So that being said, the actual plan for the rest of the school year is being recommended, presented tonight, and then hopefully the board can move that or amend that at their next meeting at the end of February. Basically, we begin by expanding our program at the secondary level by bringing Fridays back into the game. Students would maintain their Monday, Wednesday blue status and their Tuesday, Thursday red status, and on alternating weeks, either the blue group or the red group would return to school. And then assuming conditions continue to improve, the Monday after spring break, April 5, we would say that would be the time when we would bring students back to school at the secondary level 5 days a week. A caveat to that being that, particularly to solve the high school numbers issue where we have 45% working remotely and over 20% absent, we need to have parents make some type of commitment before that so we can plan for what's going to happen at our high school and give people full information as to what to expect. So right now there are too many variables basically by the flexibility we've put into to the particular program we have now. So we're asking parents by March 12 to decide what they're going to do with their children for the rest of the year. I do understand from some emails and some discussions with people that is causing some concern. What I ask is that you give us some time. One, that deadline is 5 weeks away. None of us can predict what society will look like in 5 weeks. Hopefully that decision will be easier in 5 weeks. And if you recall over the summer as we rolled out the reopening plan, there were various iterations of that plan, improvements, enhancements, and changes. This plan is no different. Basically that choice now is similar to what other districts are doing. Most of them make their students and parents make a choice and it sticks for months or a marking period. This is essentially what we're asking to happen at this point. Whether that actually happens or not is we will see when the time gets closer. But the foundation of the plan at the secondary level is that this is the beginning of the end of our circumstances, and things are going to continue to improve because it takes our classroom seating from what it is now 6 feet down to 3 feet. And that's pretty significant. What that means is that we actually mocked it up. Mr. Meehan has mocked it up for us. Over the last 2 days alone, if we were all in and less than 6 feet, instead of excluding single digit students from secondary levels, we would have excluded triple digits of students. Simply because they're that close together, they're closer together, and they change each period. So if the conditions are as they are now, that's a pretty significant issue. So the whole foundation of this plan is that in 6-7 weeks, things should look a whole lot better, and we shouldn't have to worry about that. In addition, behind the scenes are a whole bunch of things that aren't being shown publicly. For example, this week alone, and it's only Tuesday, we have 30+ employees either out because they've tested positive or because they're quarantined. All right? That type of situation causes us problems on a daily basis as far as keeping our schools open, whether it be teachers' absence without subs, whether it be bus drivers who are absent, all for good reason. If those conditions don't improve, expanding beyond what we have now is going to cause us to go the other direction. So that's the plan for the secondary level, and it is hope that by the time we get to the final decision point, that it's a clear decision. We are ready to go, or things haven't changed and this is not the place to go. We're also asking the board that if we cannot make an improvement move by that April 5th date, that we resolve that it's time to stay in our present mode and start planning for the end of the year. So that's the secondary plan. At the elementary level, we're going to make sure that the secondary Fridays stick and is working, and then we propose on March 8th we expand the 4-day a week to 5-day a week. That being said, when we redesign the elementary to come back in at all in, we were able to plan for all the Plan D kids, all the virtual kids, and the blue and red kids. So we have the ability for parents to still move back and forth at that level. We need a commitment at the secondary level so we can plan more appropriately. So that is the recommendation and the timeline. And the goal of all this is that by the time it's done, we will have clearly seen that this is the beginning of the end and it's over. Or we will have realized that this isn't the beginning of the end, and that decision will be clear as well. So this gives the board the chance to consider it at the end of February and gives us the entire month of March to make sure that we have made the right decision before we move forward. So this or some slightly revised plan will be available for the board at the next meeting to move on or amend as they see fit, Mr. Parentano.
Thank you very much, Dr. McGee. This will move us on to tonight's action items. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hollenbach has a question? That was a statement. Thank you. I forgot. Thank you very much. Seeing that there's no one in attendance this evening, we still have an obligation to call for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience wishes to make public comment? Please approach the podium. Seeing none, we will move on to our action items for this evening. We'll start with Section 2.01. Would you read that resolution, Mrs. Hollenbach?
Are we reading them separately, or can they be added together?
We're going to read them all separately.
I'd like to make a motion for 2.01, certificated staff appointments. Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the following appointments for certified staff. There's two names.
Motion's been made on 2.01. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cirillo. Any comments, questions, and concerns? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes, 7-0 this evening. Mrs. Boyle, could you read 2.02, please?
I'd like to make a motion for 2.02, certificated leaves of absence. Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the following leaves of absence for the certified staff, and there are two names.
Thank you. The motion's been made on 2.02. May I have a second? Second by Mrs. Hollenbach. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Marrington, could you read 2.03, please?
2.03, certificated revised returns from leave. Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the following revised return from leave of absence for certified staff. There's one person on the list.
Including acts of God or pursuant to an order by the governor or Pennsylvania Secretary of Health, the coach advisor shall receive pro rata compensation for the period of services rendered. I believe there are four employees on that list.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Motion's been made on 2.05. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Cirillo. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Mrs. Hollenbach, could you read 2.06, please?
I'd like to make a motion for 2.06, support staff appointments. Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the following appointments of support staff. There are 13 names on the list.
Thank you. A motion's been made by 2.06. May I have a second? I'll second that, 2.06. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 7-0. Mrs. Boyle, can you read 2.07, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve 2.07, support staff retirement, resignations, and end of assignments. Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the following retirement, resignations of support staff. And I believe there's three.
Yes, there is 3 names. Motion's been made on 2.07. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Cirillo. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Cirillo, can you read 2.08, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve 2.08, support staff leaves of absence. Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the following leaves of absence of support staff. One name listed.
Thank you. Motion's been made on 2.08. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bowman. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Marrington, could you read 2.09, please?
2.09, support staff, revised returns from leave. Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the following revised return from leave of absence of support staff, and there are 3 names on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Marrington. A motion's been made on 2.09. May I have a second? Second by Mrs. Boyle. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. I will read 2.10, Spiesel Demographic and District-Wide Feasibility Study. Whereas the Neshaminy School District desires to determine the feasibility of the existing school facilities, and whereas the Neshaminy School District desires to gain an understanding of the current school boundaries and the impact of population growth within the district, and whereas the Spiesel Architectural Group, Inc., known as Spiesel, proposal will focus on 3 areas to qualify overall district needs: demographics, capacity, and utilization, and the status of physical buildings. And whereas the Spiesel proposal will explore a variety of solutions to address the needs district-wide, now therefore be it resolved that the Neshaminy School District approves the proposal from Spiesel in the amount of $49,400 to undertake a district-wide study which will serve to satisfy the PDE requirements for PlanCom Part A for any new construction of a school building, which shall include 1, a demographic study, 2, a shapefile creation if needed, a credit of $2,500 if not, 3, GIS mapping, and 4, redistricting and attendance boundary modifications. Be it further resolved that the board president and secretary are authorized and directed to sign the proposal from Spiesel upon review and approval of the district solicitor. A motion's been made on 2.10. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen. At this time, before I call any comments, questions, or concerns, I'm going to ask Mr. Scott Downey from Spiesel Architecture Group to approach the podium to outlay a scope and parameters of his proposal. Mr. Downey, please.
Good evening. So the effort, just to give you a quick overview here, this is required by PDE for any projects that the district would undertake, so this will satisfy that requirement. As outlined, it will cover demographics. We will look at capacity, utilization in the schools. We'll meet with the school leadership, understand how the schools are programmed. We'll walk each of the schools. We'll look at the physical conditions, meet with your facility folks, understand any issues that they're aware of, and so forth. These will be combined into an overall report along with budget information associated with any needs. We'll present it to you, and then we will explore a series of scenarios to address those needs. The requirement of PDE would be that any project you would eventually submit has to match up with one of the scenarios that's outlined in that district plan. So that would be something that would be brought together so that those mesh up at the time that that is undertaken. The demographic study will look at enrollment, and was mentioned it will look at redistricting. We included 2 redistricting options to be explored within the study, within the price that is proposed there. And also the GIS mapping will allow us to combine that sending area study with the mapping so that you guys can visually see how the changes and impacts might be impacting the district.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. At this time, do anybody from the board panel, including the superintendent, have any questions they would like to pose to Mr. Downey? Hearing none, I have a few questions. Your firm is directly doing the physical study of the buildings and the feasibility. And we're using a third party that you worked with before in order to do the demographic study. I looked at I can't think of it now, the proposal from the third party, and looked at his references. Seemed very vast, even though I've never heard of the firm before. I know you said you worked with them before. Could you just highlight us on some of your experience working with that firm?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So the firm is Statistical Forecasting. Dr. Grip is the person who would be doing the work. I've worked with Dr. Grip for many, many years and across many, many districts, and I'll recommend him without reservation. Very professional, knows what he's doing, mathematician by background, and the experience I've had with him has been districts of all sizes, but that's included multiple districts that are significantly larger than you guys are, with some fairly complex community dynamics as well, and he's understood how to handle those within the projection.
Thank you very much. I mean, recently, the district, in the past, I know, and before we did our roadmap project, that which you were a partner with on us, you had done a similar feasibility study in 2013. I think you updated it once. I can't remember if it was 15 or 16 when you updated it. Is this considered an addendum to that, or is this really, since we've changed the physical plans of the building so much, is this really more of a whole new, fresh look at where we're at with the district?
So this is really a new study, given that it's been a few years since the last one was done. We will review the prior studies, not just the one we did, but the one before that. And, if there's any information that needs to be carried forward and so forth, that will be considered. But this is essentially a new study, and just like it was amended in the past when the plan was finalized for Tawanka Elementary, this study can be amended at any point as well, should, a scenario need to change for whatever reason.
I don't really have a question, I just have a comment if this is the time for it. So what this proposal does is it actually front loads a strategic plan or a comprehensive plan that we haven't started yet. Without the pandemic, we would have been in year one of a 5-year comprehensive plan. In addition to talking about the education, in that we would have liked to have included a long-term facilities plan as to what our buildings need, do we need new buildings, and move that beyond a year-to-year thing into a 5-year, 10-year thing. The first step of that is getting professionals like this group to help us do that. So had we not had the pandemic, this is where we would have been. The fact that the strategic plan, the comprehensive plan, hasn't been written yet. It will be written soon, probably adopted in September. So this will be a part of it to move that forward. What does the district look like in 5 years, in 10 years? And this particular study will help us forecast that with people who do it for a living.
And I don't want to mislead the panel or even the public. I mean, we know a lot about our own facilities.
Sure.
I mean, we have our people, our personnel. We've done various stories in rather projects in the past, as I explained in the letter. We all know what the condition of some of the facilities are. We know Pearl Buck is at the point where it has some real programmatic challenges based upon its original design, which is not a design that is really used anymore. We know about the physical conditions of the plant. We know that when we did our other demographic studies, that our kindergarten has grown at a much faster pace than we ever expected it to. I would say that's probably, most people would think that's a good thing. More people see the services that we're offering and they're putting us in here. We could go backwards. I mean, you could go back to half-day kindergarten. That would solve all those capacity pressures that we see from kindergarten. But, that would be going backwards. We don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. We have our own data of how impactful our kindergarten program has been in preparing our students for the later grades. And at this point, I think it is incumbent upon us, along with your recommendation of doing for for strategic planning purposes, to move in that direction. We know from the Facilities Committee over the last, I would say, year and a half, maybe to 2 years, I see Mr. Allen shaking his head yes, that we've discussed that we have to come up with a plan for Pearl Buck. That school has issues that needs to be addressed. It was the only one of the elementary schools that didn't get touched in the prior plans, and now we either think we need to make a decision whether we make a major investment in that facility or we move towards a new facility. So I would hope the board sees the same value in this as the administration does, and we've worked in the Facilities Committee and approves to move that forward. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Downey? Mr. Allen?
Add, we're still very much preliminary, that we're looking, our Facilities Committee, the issues with Pearl Buck. Pearl Buck's a beautiful school. It was built, though, during a time of experimentation with school facilities. And a lot of the utilities are what was considered cutting edge, but is really more experimental. And one of the downsides of that is we have trouble getting parts, equipment's breaking down, it didn't work quite as designed, it's not ideal. And we need to evaluate whether it's, the cost of the investment to bring that building back up to what we need it to be today, as opposed to whether we move to a new facility, from ground to top. And that's where we're at. Very preliminary. I want to make that clear. No decisions, certainly, and we need that report also to see where our students are, where the population is, where our needs are. I think it's catch-22. I mean, one of the reasons we went into investing in our facilities, investing in the education programs, is to attract students who may have been going off to charter schools, private schools, parochial schools. We wanted them back. And I think it's the fact that we are getting that interest, and we're getting that back. I mean, that's what we wanted. Now we have to get back and see, do we have room for them, and make room for them. So I just wanted to bring that out there. That's why we're at this point now, and we are doing our due diligence.
And additionally, on that note, when we talk about how the schools are being programmed, the administration, with the board's support over the last, I believe it's 4 years, has decided to start utilizing our schools at a higher capacity for our special need kids. Instead of sending those services more outside the district, we've been trying to bring those services back into the district. We've been successful at doing that, and doing it in a much more, I don't want to talk about the financial aspects of bringing them in-house, but I believe our kids are getting a better education by bringing them in-house. But we also may have not realized the amount of pressure it's putting on our classroom usage as far as a program point of view is going. So this is another reason why I think we have to look at this.
And we can add to that the bringing back of the pre-K program, not bringing back the starting of it. So we've been able to offer, I can't even come up with the number of students, future students who are attending a pre-K program that's housed in our schools when we can fit them, or housed elsewhere when we can't fit them. So things are looking good. We're running out of space, so we need to take a look at that.
All righty. Does anyone else have a question for Mr. Downey? Seeing none.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Hollenbach, please.
Approximately how long is this proposal and study going to take?
So the demographic study, the demographer indicated anywhere between 2 and 3 months, depending on the information and the process. The physical plant, the capacity utilization and programmatic assessment that we're going to do directly, we should be able to complete that within about 2 months. So we'll be starting, we'll do that. We'll do initial reporting to you as we complete those pieces, and then we'll begin outlining scenarios while the demographer is finishing up the report. So we'll have preliminary information from him to allow us to do that.
So by the beginning of April, is it fair? April?
Yes, that's probably accurate.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, the feasibility study that Spiegel Architecture is going to do on us is for all our schools. In addition, as in the announcement that I made at the beginning of the meeting, we already have Site Logic looking specifically at Pearl Buck. They had done an initial analysis for us last year. We have them again looking simultaneously at Pearl Buck to be actually looking at the physical aspects of what improving that facility would be. So we're taking a dual track approach. Excuse me. As I mentioned earlier, the district administration as well as our facilities committee, realizes that there's a real opportunity here in this bond market, in this very, very low interest market, to take advantage of it and make some moves as necessary. So we're moving in a dual track. Regardless of the results of Spiegel Architecture's proposal, which is going to yield us years down the road, we hope, and coordinate with Dr. McGee's future strategic planning, we may and have been discussing for the last few meetings some repairs that have been outlined, as well as possibility of facilities. So we're doing multiple things at the same time to help us plan for this. So, does anyone else have anything? Go ahead, Mr. Allen.
Just wanted to say to just, part of our facility plan included the schools that while they had internal work done, the Giza projects, we were looking at some of the facades and just modernizing, updating them, curb appeal. That's cosmetic. As Mr. McGee, Dr. McGee had pointed out, the inside are beautiful, but they still look like they're 1950, 1957. So we included that in our facility discussion of if we could, and Site Logic.
Yes, we did mention at the Site Logic to look at some of those schools in the area, and specifically we were talking about Miller, but we're asking them to look at a multitude of things, and it may take us a little while to get that portion back, but we have asked them to look at what it would take in order to, bring the appearance, of these pieces of our community, up to the standard that we think it should be as well. So we are doing that. Last call for questions before we move to a vote. Okay, Mr. Downey, thank you. If you wouldn't mind staying a little bit, I have another line of questioning I'd like to explore with you during another portion of the meeting. Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask if there's any additional questions, comments, or concerns from the board. Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 7-0. Okay, I'd like to list the items for approval at our next public board meeting. 3.01 bids, 3.02 Sunday facility usage, 3.03 settlement agreement, 3.04 first reading of policies 247, 249, 907, 3.05 reopening of schools health and safety plan modification. They will be for our next board meeting, which will be February 23rd. That will bring us to our committee reports. Mrs. Hollenbeck, Business Operations.
Our next business operations meeting is rescheduled. It will be March 16th. It'll be in the boardroom here in this building. It was originally scheduled for March 30th, and we realized that was the week of spring break. So we moved it to March 16th. We will continue to discuss the budget for next year as well as all of these other plans that have been brought up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Bowman, Educational Development.
I just realized we have a conflict of interest. So our next educational development meeting is also scheduled for March 16th in the boardroom for 6 p.m.
Now, I'm sure we can make that work.
Yes. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Facilities and Planning, Mr. Sullivan is absent this evening. Mr. Irwin, do you have that information?
The meeting was scheduled on March 24th, but again, that's during spring break, so we're going to have to reschedule that. That date is yet to be determined with Mr. Sullivan.
Okay, we'll work that out with Mr.
324th,
Sullivan, because I do want to have a March facilities meeting. We'll find a date for that.
Okay.
Mrs. Boyle, policy, please.
The next policy meeting is scheduled for March the 2nd in the boardroom, and all are welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Boyle. That'll bring us to our representative reports. IU Board, Mr. Cirillo.
Nothing new to report right now.
Thank you, Mr. Cirillo. Mrs. Boyle, Neshaminy Education Foundation.
The Neshaminy Education Foundation Board met virtually on Monday, February 8th, and they discussed past and future fundraisers, including an alumni donation appeal to start in February. The next meeting will be held on Monday, March the 8th at 4 p.m. and will also be virtual. But anyone interested in joining the NEF board or helping with their activities should contact any member for information.
Thank you, Mrs. Boyle.
Mr. Peritano,
Yes, sir.
the March 24th meeting is actually not the week of spring break, so that meeting will continue as scheduled for facilities.
Thank you. So the facility meeting remains March 24th in the Maple Point Boardroom
That's correct.
at 6:30.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Allen, Technical School. I'll back you up. I'll take my PSBA first. PSBA, this is the 125th anniversary of the Pennsylvania School Board Association's founding, and they have a beautiful presentation that's on their website to talk about the years and how they've been servicing schools and our children, supporting the schools that service our children, and I encourage people to go on their website and look at it. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Puritano. The Bucks County Technical High Schools Joint Board Committee met, I believe, Monday the 25th. Don't hold me to that, Joe. I don't have it, and it's not on our minutes here.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's correct. Thank you, Ms. Bowman. All right. We discussed at the board some capital improvements that the technical high school will be working through the authority, sending our boards more information as that we gather it. We're considering floating a bond for some capital improvements. There's need of roofing, some AC units, and fire alarm system needs updating. So that's on our docket. We also discussed, as I get to that page, the SOAR Summer Opportunities Are Real program. Again, it is all dependent on how we get with the pandemic situation, but we are hoping to hold that program starting Monday, June 21st, 2021, through Thursday, July 22nd, 2021. That's a summer program where the students come in. They get to work some of the shops, some woodworking shops, and we also have special needs students who come in and work in the cafeteria or restaurants. We're really hoping we weren't able to offer that program last summer. We're really hoping we can do that. It's a very successful and very popular program. We also approved the Bucks County Technical High School course selection book for academic technical offerings for the 2021 through 2022 school. And I am pleased to point out, or to mention, that Dr. Leon Paskey's contract was approved, and as soon as I find that again, I believe he will be with us. July 1st, 2021 is the beginning of this contract through June 30th, 2026. Dr. Paskey does an excellent job over there, and it was passed unanimously. And the only last thing I have, bit of business from them, is we are planning, again tentatively, to move to the 50% hybrid model on Monday, March 1st. The reason we're doing that, the technical program itself, their rotation will not change. We're trying to increase the academic program and allow them more in-person instruction on the academic academy side. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Before we move to the final portion of tonight's meeting, Section 6, I want to take this opportunity, since we have Mr. Downey here, if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium again, Mr. Downey. We're probably not going to see you to our next facilities meeting, and I just want to pick up on a line of questioning that the facilities panel had approached you on this dual track type of approach that we're taking to these projects. You had done some preliminary conceptual work for us of what a school facility would look like, and this district was able to provide you with topography of this site, where you had come up with some concepts of where such a square foot building would be able to fit on the property. And looking at those 5 or 6 proposals that you came up with, I believe it was the committee's thought process that I believe it was B and C that you proposed, which I believe were on the west side of the property, would be the most feasible. If the board was so inclined to move with trying to find out if the site can actually support, because we really don't know if the site can support another facility. If we wanted to move into that direction to at least get that foundational information, what would be the process you would think that how we would approach that?
So there's a couple of kind of key questions that you would look to answer. First, you would want to engage a civil engineer. Primarily, it would be the engineering side that you'd be looking for those answers right now. That's someone that you can engage directly. That doesn't have to be done through us. That allows you to keep your costs down. But they would be looking at a couple of key things. One, they would be looking at soil and general site conditions. They're going to be looking at the site utilities coming into the site to make sure there's adequate support for that second school, or what would have to be done to provide that support. Depending on what knowledge they have or what knowledge they can gain about the soil conditions, they may be able to make some initial assessments as to what you have. So you may not have to actually take geotechnical borings at this point, but they would need to do a little bit of research to determine that. And then they would also look into any planning and zoning requirements, make sure there's no restrictions that they would need to be aware of relative to the possibility of a second school on the site. So that would kind of answer the question about the viability of the Maple Point site for that second building.
And how about the utility support, whether or not the utility infrastructure can support another building?
That would be part of what they would have to look at, yes.
That would all be part of that?
Yes.
As far as that goes. At what point, or do we at any point, because I believe we did this at Tawanka, we had to do a phase 1 environmental study. I think that's what we had to do at Tawanka, or we had to do a couple phases, I think. At what point do you see that as being, or needed, necessary, or what point of the project do you do that?
So they would be able to assess whether it is necessary or not based on their initial look at the site. Depending on what requirement might dictate that, it probably would not have to be done until some point later as the building design moved forward. That way, by the time you would have to do it, you would know specifically where the building was going to go, and your site would, or your assessment would be undertaken in response to that.
And you had mentioned originally to my question that we don't have to go through you, but how are you going to work with if we pick an outside engineering firm? I mean, you're going to still have a cohesive, relationship that would make sure that anything we would do would run smoothly in the future. I just want a little curious about that aspect.
Yeah, so you can contract through us for the civil engineer so assuming we were undertaking the building project with you, you could contract through us, and we would take them in under our contract. We incur costs associated with that, so we would mark up their fee. We have to pay insurance costs and so forth. So the most cost-effective way for you guys to do it is to hire that civil engineer directly. You would contract with them. We, as the architect, just like we did at Tawanko, we would still coordinate any of our work with the engineer. That coordination would still happen as it needs to as part of the project.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions along this subject matter? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Downey. We appreciate it. We're going to move to our final period of public comment. Again, there's no one in attendance, but is there anyone that wishes to approach the podium for public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to future topics. Does anybody have any future topics? Hearing none, it moves to board comment. Are there any board members wish to make board comment? Dr. McGee, do you have any comment that you would like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Parentano. Just an end note here, we are hiring. To support our reopening plan, we need people. Those who are particular job classifications, lunch supervision, recess supervision, kitchen help, bus drivers, cleaners, etc. So if you're in need of employment, we are hiring. Even if you're not in need of employment, we are hiring. Consider it volunteering, and we will pay you. So please, if you are available, we could use you, and it supports our reopening efforts. So thank you.
Now that Dr. McGee's at his time, does any other board member wish to make comment this evening? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Cirillo. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.